This was a moment that didn't just shatter a kingdom, it gave birth to a whole new way of thinking about the world. We're going to dive into the story of how a society that seemed completely frozen in time just exploded into the French Revolution.
So, take a look at this. It's the morning of July 14th, 1789. The city of Paris is in an absolute panic. The king has sent his troops into the city, and rumors are flying that they're about to open fire on everyone. So what happens? Thousands of regular people, men and women, storm the Bastille. Now, this was a medieval fortress, a prison, and it was this huge, looming symbol of the king's absolute power.
But here's the thing. Storming the Bastille wasn't the start of the revolution. It was the boiling point. So you have to ask, how did it get to this? How did one of the most powerful monarchies in Europe just completely fall apart? Well, to really understand the explosion, we need to rewind a bit and look at the cracks that were already in the foundation.
We're talking about what's known as the Old Regime, basically French society before 1789. And honestly, it was a system that was teetering right on the edge of collapse, buckling under the weight of problems that had been building up for a long, long time.
First up, and this is a big one, money, or, well, a complete lack of it. When King Louis XVI came to the throne in 1774, the royal treasury was totally empty. I mean, think about it. Years of expensive wars, plus that costly decision to help the American colonies break away from Britain, it all added up to a debt of over 2 billion livres. That's a number so huge it was almost impossible to imagine back then.
So yeah, the government was flat broke. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. This wasn't just a financial problem. It was more like a perfect storm. You had financial ruin, deep social injustice, and all these radical new ideas swirling around, all hitting at the exact same time. Okay, so this is where things get really wild, because it shows you just how unfair the whole system was. French society was literally split into 3 groups or estates. You had the first estate, which was the clergy, and the second estate, the nobility. Together, they were maybe 3% of the population, but they had all the power, owned most of the land, and get this, they paid almost no taxes. So who was footing the bill for everything? You guessed it, the third estate. The other 97% of the people, from the poorest farmer to the richest city merchant. They paid all the taxes and had zero say in anything. And this image here, wow, it says it all, doesn't it? It's a popular cartoon from the time, and it shows you exactly how people felt. You literally see a nobleman and a clergyman riding on the back of a peasant who's being crushed under the weight of it all. There was a common saying that went, "The nobleman is the spider, the peasant the fly." I mean, that really tells you everything. The third estate felt trapped, like their work and their money were just being drained away by a tiny, privileged group that gave nothing back. The key thing to understand is that this wasn't just an economic issue. It felt deeply, personally, and fundamentally unjust. And then, just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. On top of all this injustice, people started to starve. See, the population was growing, but the farms couldn't keep up. After a few bad harvests, the price of bread, and we're talking about the main food for pretty much everyone, it just skyrocketed. For an ordinary family, this was a life-or-death crisis. So, let's move on, because while people were hungry and angry, something else was happening. They were starting to read and think in totally new ways. A wave of really radical ideas from Enlightenment philosophers started to spread, and these ideas questioned the very foundation of the old regime. These thinkers were proposing some truly revolutionary stuff. They were saying things like, hey, maybe your place in the world should be based on your talent, not what family you were born into. Philosophers like Rousseau argued that government is a contract with the people. Montesquieu said power should be separated to keep leaders in check. And Locke had already argued against the whole idea that a king's power comes from God. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just some abstract theory. The French had watched and even helped the American colonies break away from their king and create a republic based on these exact ideas. The American Revolution was powerful, living proof that another way was actually possible. So let's just recap. You've got debt, injustice, hunger, and a whole set of powerful new ideas. It's a powder keg just waiting for a spark. And now, we're back in 1789, and that spark is about to be lit. The king was completely out of options. To fix the debt, he had to raise taxes. But he couldn't do it on his own, so he was forced to call a meeting of the Estates General. Now, you have to understand, this was a massive deal. This kind of meeting hadn't been called in 175 years.
But the second they all got together, they hit a wall. And it all came down to a simple question. How do we vote? The old way was that each estate got one vote. Well, you can do the math, right? The clergy and the nobles could always team up to outvote the third estate, 2-1. But the third estate, fired up by these new ideas, demanded they vote by head. One person, one vote. This was a showdown over basic fairness.
The king says no. So what does the third estate do? They don't just go home, they walk out. They find a nearby indoor tennis court of all places, and they take matters into their own hands. They declare that they are the new National Assembly, the true representatives of France, and they swear an oath not to leave until they've written a brand new constitution. This was it. This was an open act of revolution.
And so, while these politicians are busy drafting a constitution at the palace in Versailles, the people back in Paris, scared and hungry, finally erupt. And that brings us right back where we started, to the storming of the Bastille.
You see, the fall of the Bastille was so much more than a riot. It was a clear signal that the king's authority had collapsed. And in the aftermath, the revolutionaries moved with unbelievable speed to tear down the old world and start building a new one.
I mean, just think about how fast everything happened. Less than a month after the Bastille, on this one incredible night, August 4th, the National Assembly completely abolishes the entire feudal system. Just gone. Centuries of privileges for the nobles and clergy were wiped out in a single session. A few weeks later, they issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a cornerstone document for human rights, and by 1791, they had a new constitution ready to go.
And with that constitution, France was completely transformed. It became a constitutional monarchy. Power was no longer in the hands of one man, it was separated into different branches of government. The king was still there, but his absolute power was gone, held in check by the law and the will of the people. So when you step back, the legacy of this first stage of the revolution is just immense. The ideas it championed, that people should govern themselves, that liberty and equality are basic rights, that no ruler is above the law, these ideas didn't just change France. They became the bedrock of modern democratic thinking all over the world.
It's so easy for us now to take ideas like liberty, equality, and human rights for granted, but they were forged in the fire of this revolution. And you know, this was just the beginning. The revolution was about to get much more radical and a lot more violent, and that leaves us with a powerful question, one we still wrestle with today. What is the true cost of tearing down an old world to build a new one?